The next conversation. Argue less, talk more.
Right. It really feels like a blueprint, for handling
Okay.
conversations, especially the ones that feel tricky or high stakes.
Exactly. The core idea seems to be shifting away from, well, conflict and more towards genuine connection.
That's the thread running through everything.
Yeah.
So our goal here is really to pull out the most useful bits, the actionable ideas you can actually use.
Yeah, stuff that helps you communicate better, feel more confident, and ultimately build stronger relationships.
Okay, so let's dive in. The absolute core idea, the foundation. It's that good communication isn't about winning. It's about connection.
Which leads straight to that really provocative statement near the beginning, never win an argument.
Right. That feels so backward at first. We're all taught, or at least we assume, that the point of disagreeing is to be right, to win.
But the material lays out this compelling case for why winning is actually a losing game.
Because even if you technically win the point, you've probably damaged something way more valuable in the process.
Like trust or respect.
Exactly. Or just the chance to actually talk openly later.
Yeah.
The notes say you often just end up with contempt, right? You win the argument, but you kind of lose the person.
And the real issues just fester underneath.
Yeah. And there's that great story that illustrates this perfectly right at the start, the one about Bobby LePre.
Oh, right. The author, Fisher, he's a lawyer, and he's in this deposition with a witness, Bobby, who is just incredibly hostile, hates lawyers.
Totally erupts, just starts yelling, calling lawyers the worst, dismissing everything Fisher says.
Yeah.
Super aggressive.
And the natural human reaction, is to push back, defend yourself, get angry too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Fisher talks about feeling that himself, the tension, the urge to retaliate. But he makes a conscious choice not to go there.
He realizes fighting back will just, well, shut everything down. He won't get the information he needs.
So instead of getting defensive, he gets curious. He notices that Bobby's anger seems way out of proportion to the actual situation.
And that leads to this key insight.
Hmm?
Often an argument isn't just about what you're talking about. It's masking another conversation happening inside that person's head that you weren't invited to.
I love that phrasing, like there's this hidden dialogue going on. The person you see isn't the person you're talking to.
So Fisher gets it. He needs to figure out what that other conversation is about for Bobby.
And what he does next is pretty amazing. He just completely sidesteps all the insults about lawyers.
Yeah. What does he do?
He asks Bobby about his biggest personal struggle that year. Just completely changes the subject, pivots away from the fight.
Wow. That's unexpected.
Totally. And it works. Bobby just opens up,
Mm-hmm.
talks about the incredible stress of moving his mom into assisted living, dealing with all the legal stuff, feeling totally alone with it.
So the anger was really about feeling overwhelmed and scared.
Exactly. The whole aggressive front just crumbles. And Fisher's response is simple, pure empathy. Something like, I'm sorry, I can't imagine. He validates the struggle.
And that breaks through.
Completely. Bobby starts crying. The whole atmosphere just shifts. Fisher even helps connect him with resources for the elder law stuff. And Bobby becomes cooperative, direct.
And the end of the story is he gives Fisher a hug.
A hug. From the guy who started out furious at lawyers. It perfectly shows the main point. Arguments are often like these windows into another person's struggle.
Or maybe even your own struggle sometimes.
Right. And if you look past the surface conflict, you might actually find a way to connect and understand.
That really does change the whole frame. Which leads us nicely into the first major section of the material, the internal work, preparing yourself first.
Because you can't really show up effectively for someone else if you're not grounded yourself.
Makes sense. And one key idea here is the power of your next conversation. Why focus on the next one?
Well, the first one, after something difficult,
Mm-hmm.
it's often messy, reactive, emotional.
Yeah, you say things you don't mean.
Exactly. But the next conversation, that's your chance for a do-over. A chance to heal, maybe. After things have cooled down, you can approach it differently, maybe get closer to the real truth.
A chance to repair things. But these conversations, especially the hard ones, they need planning. The material stresses having goals.
Yes. Because if you don't have a clear goal, you just kind of hope it goes well based on how it plays out in your head, which usually leads to disappointment.
And the trap is setting unrealistic goals, right? Like demanding an immediate apology or expecting them to completely flip their view or solving everything all at once.
Totally unrealistic. So the solution is setting smaller, reachable goals.
Like what? Give me an example.
Okay, maybe your goal is just ensuring they know you care.
Sure.
Or genuinely trying to understand their perspective, even if you don't agree. Or maybe just agreeing on the very next step. or even just leaving feeling like you were heard.
That shifts it from wanting to win to having something to learn, not something to prove.
Exactly. It's a huge mental shift. It's about curiosity, not combat. And the material uses this nice analogy. Goals are the destination.
But values are the
Ugh.
compass.
Right. Your values guide how you show up. It's about asking yourself, how will I show up for myself? Honoring your own integrity, your self-respect, no matter what.
And your values help in those tough moments. They make the hard decisions for you, ensuring the real you shows up when things get difficult.
To keep you anchored.
Yeah.
Which brings us to defining connection itself. The material says it's understanding and acknowledgement.
Not necessarily agreement, just
Yeah.
getting it and showing you get it.
Like a two-factor authentication.
Right.
You need both. Understanding internally, acknowledging externally. It's what makes communication more than just data transfer, like a text message. Connection gives it life.
And it's important that the material also points out sometimes not connecting is the right move.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially with toxic interactions. You don't have to force a connection that compromises your own well-being. That's a boundary in itself.
Okay, so what gets in the way of connection? The material lists three main things.
First, lack of awareness. Not realizing how you're coming across your tone, body language.
And there's that wild detail about how we hear ourselves through bone vibrations, which isn't how others hear us.
Blew my mind too. You literally sound different to yourself than you do to everyone else. Okay, second barrier.
Lack of understanding. Failing to really appreciate the other person's viewpoint. So many conflicts stem from that feeling of not being seen or understood.
Makes sense. And the third.
Lack of self-assurance. Confidence, basically. Fear of being direct, using wishy-washy language, avoiding eye contact. It holds you back from expressing needs or setting boundaries.
And the notes hint here that confidence isn't just a feeling you have, it's something built by action.
Which is a perfect bridge to the next part, putting it all into practice. Moving from internal prep to external action with three key rules.
Rule number 1, say it with control. And this isn't about controlling the other person.
No, it's about controlling yourself, right? Your own reactions, especially when things get heated, stopping yourself from escalating things.
Exactly. Preventing your gut reactions from derailing the conversation. Because we have that natural tendency to just react. The notes talk about the two phases of argument. Ignition and cooling.
Ignition is that fight or flight moment. Body tenses, heart races, brain's rational part kind of goes offline.
Totally. You're running on instinct, often saying things you immediately regret later.
And cooling is when you calm down, clarity returns, and you think, oh man, why did I say that?
Right. So control is about hitting the brakes on ignition and shifting towards cooling more quickly. Understanding why we ignite is part of that.
Psychological triggers, yeah. Things like feeling judged, identity being attacked, losing autonomy. And that big one, fear of loss.
That fear of losing the relationship or status or control, it makes us defensive or maybe overly cautious. Knowing your triggers helps you manage them instead of being managed by them.
Okay, so how do we actually gain that control in the moment? The material gives three tools. First, your first word is your breath.
Foundational tool. It's about taking conscious, deliberate breath right when you feel that tension rising. It literally interrupts the physical momentum of ignition.
And there's a specific technique, the conversational breath.
Yes. A 3-second inhale through the nose, like 2 seconds, then a little extra sniff, and then a 6-second exhale, also through the nose. Exhale twice as long as the inhale.
Why so specific?
Physiology. The nasal breathing, the long exhale, it triggers your body's calming response, like a physiological sigh. Lowers heart rate, reduces anxiety, brings back focus. It's similar to what Navy SEALs use.
Wow, so it's actively using your biology to regain calm and focus. And this breath is a pause, right? Strategic silence.
Exactly. And that pause signals intention, confidence, self-control. Shows you're choosing your response. There's that example of Elizabeth in a deposition using the breath to visibly steady herself under pressure.
Powerful. Okay, second tool.
Your first thought is a quick scan. An internal check-in. 4 steps. Breathe, that conversational breath. Close your eyes briefly. Examine your body for tension. And label the main emotion you feel in one word.
Like a rapid mindfulness exercise.
Pretty much. Increases self-awareness, helps you notice and release physical tension, and gets you re-centered on your actual goals and values for the conversation. You can even say it quietly, like, okay, feeling defensive. Turns insecurity into awareness.
Got it. And the third tool for control.
Your first conversation is a small talk with yourself, based on the idea that mindset begins with words.
Like a quick internal pep talk.
Kinda, yeah, but very concrete and context specific. A A short phrase to recenter, boost confidence, and remind yourself of the approach you want to take. Personal, action-oriented.
Like the examples, start with my breath, find the struggle, claim your space, little mental cues.
Exactly. So rule 1 is all about mastering that internal state first.
Which logically leads to rule 2, say it with confidence, and this builds directly on having that self-control.
Right. And the material has this really empowering take on confidence. It's not just something you are, it's a feeling you build through experience.
So you act first, and the feeling follows.
Precisely. You don't wait to feel confident, you take confident actions, and that builds the feeling over time. The action is assertiveness. Assertiveness is confidence in motion.
It's the outside thing, creating the inside thing. I like that.
And this rule is really focused on how you say things. Delivery matters a lot.
Okay, what are the practical strategies here? Removing uncertain language.
Yeah, ditching words like just, sort of, maybe, I guess.
Yeah.
And cutting unnecessary adverbs. The notes say, serve your words neat, clean, and direct.
And say less, don't over-explain. Fewer words often carry more weight. Also cut the filler words, the ums, likes, use silence instead.
Definitely. And never undersell yourself. Avoid those phrases like, sorry to bother you, or this might sound stupid, or always asking, does that make sense?
Because they undermine your message before you even deliver it. What's the suggested replacement for, does that make sense?
Something like, what are your thoughts on that? Or how does that land with you? Puts the focus on their reaction, not your uncertainty.
Good tip. Also, expressing needs unapologetically, using I need statements, and cutting back on excessive apologies.
Huge one. Replacing sorry with thank you is powerful. Thank you for your patience instead of sorry I'm late. It reframes things positively.
Much more empowering. And they even suggest starting with I'm confident.
Yeah, just saying it signals assurance, both outwardly and inwardly. Plus things like tone, avoiding uptalk, using downward or neutral inflection, making eye contact, a measured pace.
Speaking of pace, controlling the pace with pauses is part of this rule too.
Absolutely. Strategic pauses show you're in control. Short ones for emphasis, longer ones for reflection or waiting. They mentioned that anecdote about the truck driver who cracked under a long silence because he was being dishonest. Honest people are usually okay with pauses.
Interesting. Okay, so rule 2 is building confidence through action and delivery. How does this apply to tricky situations, like handling insults or rudeness?
The main idea is don't give them dopamine.
Dopamine, like they get a kick out of being mean.
Sort of, yeah.
Hmm.
People being insulting are often seeking a reaction, attention, control, maybe distracting from their own issues. Your negative emotional response is their reward, their dopamine. So deny them the reward.
Don't react emotionally.
Right. Use a long pause after an insult. Silence kills their buzz.
Mm.
Ask them to repeat a belittling comment. Takes the fun out of it for them. Ask about their intent. Did you mean for that to sound rude? Or did you want that to hurt?
Okay.
Then just wait. Silence is powerful.
Okay. And bad apologies. The material seems pretty firm on not accepting them.
Yeah, because bad apologies are often about ego, not remorse. They deny your feelings, block healing, so the advice is direct. Call it out. Gently but firmly state what you do need an apology for.
And there are specific lines for different types.
Exactly. For sorry you feel that way, try don't apologize for my feelings, apologize for what you did. For sorry if, say change the if to that. For excuses like, sorry I'm stressed, it's apologize for your words, not your stress.
What about those manipulative ones, like, sorry, I'm just a horrible person?
Just to calm, I'm willing to accept an apology.
Yeah.
Don't engage the drama. And I was just kidding. Maybe then be funnier. Or a simple, I wasn't. Assertive, clear, doesn't get pulled in.
Good tools. It also mentions interruptions using the person's name as a circuit breaker.
Right. And a better way to disagree. First, filter. Is this something we have to agree on right now? Often, the answer is no.
And instead of, I disagree, use your vantage point.
Yeah. I see things differently.
Mm-hmm.
I take another approach. I tend to lean the opposite way. It's less confrontational. And if they push, just repeat your vantage point phrase calmly. Shows you're holding your ground.
This ties right into setting boundaries, which is a big part of Rule 2, saying no.
Which is hard. We're often conditioned to please people. But saying no is framed as reclaiming your power, prioritizing yourself.
And the core idea, no is a complete sentence. No need for elaborate excuses.
Exactly. Excuses weaken the boundary. And you need to learn to embrace the discomfort of potentially disappointing someone.
Because that feeling often means the boundary is actually working. And it's often more about your discomfort than their actual need. Mostly ego, the notes say.
Right. The technique. Say no first, then gratitude, then kindness. If pushed, repeat the no.
And boundaries aren't just lines, they're perimeters.
Like a fence around what you value, health, family, self-respect. Your actions define that fence, showing others what's important and how you expect to be treated.
It's like giving people an operator's manual for you, saying, I don't respond well to yelling, shows you're in control of your space.
Which brings us to the final rule, Rule 3. Say it to connect. Now that you have control and confidence, you can use them to really connect, even when it's tough.
This is where it all comes together for those difficult conversations. The notes admit conversations about the hard stuff aren't easy.
Right, that's why it's last. You need the foundation first. The difficulty often comes from uncertainty. You don't know where you're going, or you don't know how to get there.
So the goal is to reduce that difficulty from the start. Approach is key. What's the recommended approach?
First, set aside real dedicated time. And crucially, don't start with those vague lines like "got a second" or "we need to talk."
Why are those so bad?
They trigger immediate anxiety, fear of the unknown, puts the other person straight into that defensive ignition phase because they're bracing for bad news but don't know what.
So it backfires immediately.
Totally. Instead, schedule a specific time and state the topic clearly and calmly. Can we find 20 minutes Friday to discuss the project feedback? Or when's a good time tomorrow to review the budget?
Okay, rule number 2 for the approach.
Drop the pleasantries. Don't start a hard conversation with, "Hey, how are you?"
Because it feels fake.
Yeah, people can sense it. It feels disingenuous and just raises their guard more. The notes say people want honesty, direct, true honesty. Being direct, while maybe uncomfortable for a second, is actually kinder.
So just state the nature of the conversation up front.
Gently, but yes. This might be difficult to hear, or I have something uncomfortable I need to share, or this is going to be a tough conversation.
Gives them dignity, removes the anxiety of guessing, grounds everyone in reality, builds your credibility. Clarity is kind.
Exactly. The material also mentions a third principle, begin with your end, having a clear outcome in mind, but doesn't detail specific techniques for it in these notes.
Got it. And this section also covers the flip side, how to receive difficult feedback, how to be a safe space.
Right. Connection is a two-way street. And the final thought is that even though these conversations are hard, they are actually your greatest opportunity to connect.
So that's the journey through these ideas on the next conversation. From connection over conflict, understanding those hidden struggles, doing the internal work with goals and values.
All the way to the practical rules.
Ah,
Controlling yourself first, then speaking with confidence through assertiveness and boundaries, and finally using all that to approach difficult conversations in a way that actually builds connection.
it really shifts the focus from winning or being right, doesn't it? Towards understanding, acknowledging, and just showing up authentically.
Guided by your values.